Yes, you bend with the forces, but you're still yourself. And that was how Thailand maintained its independence all these years. And all of us in ASEAN are learning the Thai trick of bending with external forces, but still within ourselves maintaining a core, which is our own sense of self and self-identity. We are now entering a world where all the pieces are moving in very troubling ways and in uncertain ways. The re-arrival of Trump refocuses our mind on all these key changes happening in the world. He promised to end the war in Ukraine within a day. I think McGregor said he can. No, Jeffrey Sachs said he can if he acknowledges that Ukraine will be neutral and will not join NATO. Then the war will end, because that was the reason for the war in the first place. I mean, whether or not that's justified is a separate question. But in Putin's mind, that was the reason for his special operation. The war in the Middle East is beyond the power of ordinary mortals to resolve in the short term. I remember Kissinger writing, if there were an easy solution, it would have been found a long time ago. So there's no easy solution. And therefore, there is no short-term solution. There's only a long-term approach. And anybody in authority can only hope to move forces in a direction which may one day, years from now, find solution. For us in Asia, these are distant wars. And for China, well, I wouldn't put it this way, but for China, it may even be an unintended good thing, because it has taken American attention away from this part of the world. On October the 10th, the celebration of the 1911 Revolution, which is Taiwan's National Day, Lai Ching-te gave a speech in which certain sentences were offensive to China. So China organized a naval exercise which blockaded Taiwan at a time when there was not a single aircraft carrier in the Pacific, because they were all there in the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean to look after other problems. China could have walked in, but of course China did not. Why should China want to precipitate a crisis in this part of the world when there are distant crises miring the Americans in a lot of problems elsewhere? When they say, when the enemy has made a mistake, don't interrupt him. Of course, they will come back for the inauguration, but I don't think they'll be there very long, because there are more urgent matters to attend to far away. We don't know how the world is going to change, and we cannot base our plans on a set of assumptions that it will turn one way, that things will turn one way or the other. All we can do is to posit in our minds different scenarios. If there is a new Cold War between the US and China, if there's peace in Ukraine, if there's war in Ukraine, if there's big war in the Middle East because Netanyahu succeeds in dragging the US into a war with Iran, we don't know. Then there's Trump, who is a bit of a joker in the pack. Bill Bradley, an old friend, told me, no friend of Trump, because when Bill Bradley was senator in New Jersey, Trump was running a casino in Atlantic City. In 2016, he reminded me to take Trump seriously. He said there are 4 things about Trump which have not changed since he was a young man. He's against free immigration. So he's going to build a wall. But he's going to allow many foreign workers in the US because the US needs their labor. He's against free trade. He believes that free trade without adequate safeguards leads to deindustrialization and the immiseration of sectors of the population whom in trade theory should be compensated by reallocation of the benefits, but in reality are just discarded because the advantages of free trade accumulate in a few. But he's always pro-business. So oil is liquid gold. Cheap energy is important for any economy. Too many regulations kill business and are costly. And the last thing, Trump has always been against war. Of course, he is not an easy person to negotiate with, because if he wants $1, he asks for $20. If he wants peace, he will threaten you with a nuclear attack. So under the first Trump administration, people didn't quite understand him, and maybe he didn't quite understand China. So instead of win-win, they're going to lose-lose and got stuck there. I think in the new Trump administration, the world now has a better measure of Trump. And I think Trump would have gotten a better measure of China. And he's always not disliked Putin. So despite him being very pro-Israel, I think he will not bite the bait of a war with Iran. Because if he decides to have a war with Iran, he will define Trump too. And I don't think he wants that as a legacy. He goes against all his instincts. But we can never be sure. Things can happen. In the morning when we wake up, we check our phone. Oh, nothing has happened yet. But something may happen. And one morning when we wake up from a pleasant dream, we confront a nightmare. But happily, in ASEAN, we live in a nice part of the world. If you draw a 5-hour flying radius around Bangkok, it's half the world's population. And it's a peaceful part of the world. And it's growing rapidly. And if we can maintain the peace for another generation, the economy of this, the combined economy of this part of the world will be enormous. And the rest of the world will have to follow. And it's within grasp. If US-China relations are well managed. Between India and China, in Kazan, they've closed one chapter and opened a new chapter. There's no danger that they'll get too close to one another. But there's no need for them to fight each other. And in between, playing a critical role, not by strength, but by weakness. Not by direction, but by indirection. Not by hardness, but by softness, is ASEAN. Because in the Thai way, we're al dente. We're never rigid, you know? We're always soft, moving, but maintaining our sense of self. And however the world changes, if we keep flexible, without losing ourselves, we'll create a platform where others can meet, resolve some of their problems. It was not an accident that Trump met Kim Jong-un for the first 2 times in ASEAN. It's not an accident for cross-strait relations. Gu Wang, Xi Jinping, Ma Ying-jeou, both times they met in Singapore. It is not an accident that till today, the only table around which the 6 parties involved in the Korean Peninsula can sit around a table is in ASEAN. It was not an accident that the trilateral summit, Japan, Korea, Japan, first met on the sidelines of ASEAN meetings. But there's one challenge here, which is technology. Technology is stratifying society. Every time there's new technology, the clever people with money, they invest, they displace workers, they amass more profits, social divisions grow. And if we are not mindful of this in every country of ASEAN, then instead of us sticking together, internally, we will break up. We can only be al dente if there's a core, and we can only have this core if there's solidarity. And this solidarity requires a certain feeling of those in the elite for those whom they have responsibility for. That when they go to the countryside, where they meet people who are in dire straits, a feeling for them, and almost a sense of moral obligation to help. It is in Buddhist culture, it's in Islamic culture, it is in Christian culture. And it is not a bad thing at all that the people in Southeast Asia remain religious. Because without that sense of moral responsibility for other human beings who may be disadvantaged by technology, then all the isms that we may profess come to nothing. But this solidarity requires us to accept diversity as a starting point. No, ASEAN is so complicated. No one in ASEAN understands all of ASEAN. No leader in ASEAN understands all of ASEAN. If you ask, say, Prabowo about the history of the Philippines, if you ask Lawrence Wong about the history of Myanmar, one about the other, it's just too complicated. There's no simple history of Southeast Asia which is not a collection, an impossible collection of disparate facts. So this diversity is an essential part of ASEAN. But what it calls from all of us who live here is a kind of an instinctual respect. Yes, we're all different. You're Filipino, you're Laotian, and on one side we have China, the other side India and Islam and the West, all larger than we are. But we live together in this remarkable part of the world, archipelagos, peninsulas, plenty of coastline, all connected by the sea, which was the original internet. So next year, in Bandung, 70th anniversary, embodying a very precious principle in international affairs, that in the multipolar world, diversity is the starting point. Not just in culture and history, but in political systems, in how we see human beings should be properly organized in families and tribes. As a starting point, but requiring from all of us mutual respect, mutual non-interference, cooperation for mutual benefit, and an acknowledgement of a common humanity. So Indonesia, when they had a nationalist movement, made a conscious decision that though it is the biggest Muslim country in the world, its first principle of statehood was the belief in one God, in Panchasila. Belief in one God, meaning that we are all brothers and sisters. Because if we acknowledge one common father, then naturally we are all brothers and sisters. And this we can accept in Southeast Asia. That when Myanmar, like snakes and ladder, have slid down the snake to the bottom again, that we continue to feel for them, to wish them well, and to help them where we can. So these are just little thoughts which suffuse the 3 volumes of musings. In the course of my growing up, my time in the armed forces, my years in government, and subsequently in the private sector, and working over the decades with different religious groups, representing the principal religious groups in the world. Thank you.
What do you guys think? Do you guys think he is right that ASEAN will be the next region of global prosperity and influences? Please leave your comment below. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you for making it this far. If you like this video, you might want to share it with a like-minded friend. Thank you, and as always, stay blessed.